Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the special school board meeting being held today, which is Monday, August 21st, or 24th, excuse me, Monday, August 24th, 2020. It is 6:03 and I will call this meeting to order. First line of business would be roll call, and we'll do that through a roll call vote. So Jim Bryant.
Here.
Is here. Mike Christensen.
I'm here.
Arlen Derricks.
Here.
Jeannie Fair.
Here.
Heidi Jones.
Here.
Holly Tower.
Here.
And Chair is here. So all school board members are present this evening. We'll go ahead and stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
of the United States of America
and to the
and
republic
for which it stands,
one
nation,
under
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
At least I'm ahead. Sorry. Thank you. I have asked Heidi to share with us the mission statement for our school district this evening. Oh, Heidi, you're on mute.
You think I know better by now. The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you. Before you, you should all have a copy of the agenda for this evening. Does anybody have any additions or changes to make to the agenda?
We really can't as a special board meeting. We have to stick to whatever we have on the agenda, so.
Yep. All right, so then we need to vote on the agenda. We'll start with Mr. Christensen.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second it. This is Janie.
Why do I always do this step, Heidi? Motion made by Heidi, seconded. Any other discussion? All
Let's
right,
vote.
then we'll vote, starting with Mr. Christensen.
I'll say yes.
Mr. Derrick.
Yes.
Ms. Fair.
Yes, aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So the agenda passes 7-0. The first item on our agenda then is the hiring of a Red Wing High School assistant principal. You have background information provided to you in your board book. And it looks like Mr. Nemenich and Superintendent Anderson will be presenting on that. So I'll put it in your hands.
I'll just jump in real quick before George takes over. We did include some additional background information and a recommended motion this afternoon regarding this topic. George will explain the selected candidate and the process used to select him.
Okay.
Sorry about that. All right. So we put an offer forward to Mr. Isaac Matzik. Isaac is currently holds a position in the Winona Public Schools as an assistant principal at Winona High School. His background, before being at Winona, he worked in the Rochester Public Schools at Ben Franklin Elementary and Montessori at Franklin. He worked there as an administrator for 5 years. He has a lot of strengths that he brings to the table. He's basically his references have described him as a team player and student-centered in his approach. He's a great listener, demonstrates a growth mindset, and empowers teachers. Isaac has a great grasp of technology and how it can help with the learning process. He also has extensive equity training and leadership experience working with diverse communities and student populations. I know Isaac very well as he worked for me for 5 years at Ben Franklin. I wasn't surprised to see him as we went through this process do as well as he did in the interviewing, that he was chosen as our top candidate out of a pool of 42 candidates. He graded out high. He was selected as one of our 6 finalists from a group of 18 highly qualified candidates that went through our speed round interviews, which we conducted on Friday, August 14th. He rose to the top during our second round of formal interviews conducted on Monday and Tuesday, August 17th and 18th. He was a consensus choice by the group after reference checks, and he was offered the position. And one of his references plainly stated he's the best hire I've ever made. I would concur with that myself, as a great hire. Isaac will be able to start with us on Monday, August 31st, so a week from today. So we are very excited to put his name forward because we know he's very, very competent, and I will do a great job for us.
Karsten, what's the impact on our budget with an assistant? Is it a second assistant principal at the high school then?
Correct. It'd be a second assistant principal. Jackie could give you a better estimate, but I would estimate it's approximately $120,000 to $130,000 per year.
Is Jackie coming on?
I don't see that she's here. Heidi?
Oh, thank you. I just had a question, George. Now that, if this position goes forward, how does that change the structure? I mean, our division of labor amongst those 2 assistant principals, is one going to have a different focus than the other? Have you any plan about that going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. So initially, we are probably going to have, I like your phrase, division of labor. I think that's initially, because we have a new grade coming aboard in the 7th grade, and we were kind of moving towards kind of a middle school feel with our 8th grade for the coming year, that the focus will be more with 7th and 8th grade, but we also want him to be a part of things with 9th and 9th grade as well. So if we could, I guess the division of labor would be that HOS would spend most of his time with probably 9, 10, 11, 12 to start, but then maybe acquiesce to Isaac on 9th grade things once he gets his feet wet in the building. And then I think, as far as the division of labor, as far as the teacher observations and things like that go, I think he'll still he will be doing teacher observations with all staff, not just staff within the 7th and 8th grade per se, or 9th grade. But our focus as far as student management would be in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Jim?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, George.
Good evening.
Reading quite a resume, or quite a few paragraphs of Mr. Matzik. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
Pretty good guess. I think it's an excellent choice. I'll commend you for stepping outside the box and getting 42 candidates, interviewing people from outside the district. I think he's an excellent choice. I think he'll do a wonderful job. I was not supportive of this originally because I think of the budgetary things. I think I originally asked to try to find some money for it. Mike hit a good question about what's the impact. And then somebody could answer step 6, how many steps are in the principal's agreement? And, I haven't decided how I'm voting yet, but if I vote no, it's not against Mr. Matzik. He sounds like an excellent choice. I just had my reasons from the past when we started this, because I believe with the hybrid, you're going to have half the students in here. We don't know what 2 or 3 weeks of game are going to bring us. We may just go full bore. Great. We may go distance learning. We don't know, and that could all change. So nothing against your choice. And that it's just I still haven't made up my mind. And then, so maybe Karsten can answer how many steps there are in the principal's contract, since you've chosen to start him at step 6. Am I correct on that? Did I read that right? Yep.
Yep. I think Karsten's saying something, and I think he's muted.
Yeah, I believe there are 6 steps in the principal's agreement, but I'll be double checking here.
So you start
take just a minute, unless you know, George, offhand.
I think there are 6 steps, if I'm not mistaken. It's either 6 or 7, but I'm pretty sure it's 6.
So you're starting him on the top step then.
Yeah, I think I know that is always a question that comes up as far as where to start somebody, and I think it'd be we'd be remiss if we didn't honor the years of experience that he has in doing that. But that's the only as far as the steps go. I mean, I think that's what happens when you get somebody with experience. You're going to have to pay a little bit more for that.
Thank you for clarifying how many steps are in the agreement. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, and help.
Yeah, and
Sorry, Karsten.
there are 6 steps in the agreement, so that part's confirmed.
And when we talk about steps, really we go by years of experience, generally, right?
Correct. It depends on the type of experience. So, for example, if a principal candidate had 5 years of teaching experience, I don't think it would count towards the steps. But because he has that previous leadership experience in schools, that's why it would count.
Okay, thank you for helping to clarify that. Janie had a question or comment.
Yep. So just a couple, Mr. Nemenich.
Yeah.
We're still calling you George, but so I know that one reason I kind of supported this was bringing up the 7th grade up, and so I'm wondering, if things go back to how they normally are next year, what plans do you have kind of with this position, or how are we protecting us if things change again? Because I know you've always said you've needed a second principal, assistant principal, so I don't deny that, but I'm just wondering, we talked about some special ed needs, so if you can kind of comment on if his special ed experience, and then secondly, like what happens if next year 7th grade is back into a normal routine?
Yeah, that's a good question, Janie. As far as the special ed experience goes, one thing that's one thing where his experience is valuable to us. When he worked at Ben Franklin, I can speak to this personally. The building that we had was a center for special ed at the elementary level. So he's worked with setting 3 homerooms. He's worked with the setting 3 DCD SP rooms. He's had lots of experience with a lot of different special ed issues that have come up because we had so much experience with that in that building. So I think that's a valuable asset that he brings. And then as far as, if 7th grade were to go back to Twin Bluff, I still, as we talked about earlier and you mentioned, I do think the building, the high school needs that extra administrative support. I think it always has. just and I'll speak as a former parent and staff member in the district. I always felt like we were shorthanded at the high school with the 8th grade being there. And so I just think this would help balance some things a little bit. And so, yeah, that's my feeling. I know maybe others might feel differently, but we definitely could use the support.
Thank you.
If I could just add a little bit to what George said. I know that Isaac has experience in that the elementary school with significant special education programming. That does not mean that we don't need more special administrative support. I think it's recognized throughout the district that we do. The problem is that we need both. We need extra administrative experience at the high school as well as in our special education department. And so, of course, it all depends on the budget. But within a few months, we'll be presenting the next HR plan, and it will include extra special education administrative support, probably at the very top of the list.
Go ahead, Holly.
Thank you. Well, I, for one, am very pleased with this hire. Having worked at the high school prior to George becoming the administrator back in 2012, it was evident that we needed more admin support way back then. So this is something that's, it's not rocket science. This is kind of a basic need. And this is much like the basic need we do need in special ed, which you just addressed, Karsten. I'd like to see the process in detail, like we just saw, and I liked hearing George speak to it. Again, when we're inconsistent with processes and policies, that breaks trust. So this time it was followed. Excellent job. And George, congratulations. I think you guys are going to have a great team.
Thank you, Holly.
With that, I'll make the motion, Heidi Jones, to approve the hiring of Isaac Matzek as an assistant principal at Red Wing High School on step 6 of the Principals Association Agreement.
Mike will second.
Motion made by Heidi, seconded by Mike. Any other discussion on this motion? All right, seeing none, then we will take a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Derricks.
Aye.
Ms. Fair?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
Mr. Bryant?
No.
Mr. Christensen?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So that passes 6-1. Congratulations. I look forward to meeting your new assistant.
Thank you very much.
And thanks, George, for all of the work that I know your team is doing up there, getting ready. I know that in a normal year, getting all those schedules ready is quite the job. Now with COVID and having some kids out and a whole nother grade coming up, that you've got a big task ahead of you. So we appreciate all the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, it's a big task, and I'm fortunate I have good staff that's working very hard right now. So we'll be ready when we need to be.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our agenda then is 2.2, second reading of the policies. Looks like there's no action needed at this time, but they are listed there for us to review. Do we have any comments?
Just a reminder about the process. The policy committees reviewed these policies, and there are some changes, as noted in the red line copies. This will be the second reading, and so we'll look for approval on September 8th.
Great. Any other comments on the second reading of these proposals? There's a lot of them. Holly.
Yes, thank you. There are a lot of them. However, they're extremely important, and they're important that we know what's going on when we make our decisions. And I'm not saying people don't. I just think it's critical that this, along with our equity policy, which is number 1,000, basically becomes the the bottom of the pyramid in which we build. So I have yet to see that in the district where equity is the forefront, and that's how we build our pyramid. But I think since we brought it back around, the last time it was reviewed was in 2011. So we're 9 years late. However, we are going to do this the right way. So I really hope everybody who continues board work, I know some of you are leaving, so, but who decides to run for the board also knows the policies or takes a long time to look through them.
And if I could add, the policy committee and I thought it would be best to review the policy 1000 or the inclusive education plan on a yearly basis. So you'll see that reviewed every year.
That's an excellent idea. Thank you. Anything else on the policies? All right, then moving on to our next agenda item, it is the review of the handbook. And there's some changes that we need to verify and okay. So
yeah, we have 2 handbooks presented for approval. One is the student handbook that is for district-wide use. And I did review thanks to Arlen's suggestion over the weekend, I did review it one more time, just double check a lot of different things. And so there's some minor adjustments that I included in the revised background information sheet. And so nothing controversial. I will say there are some major changes though in the handbook. First of all, the suggestion is to not charge for parking at the high school. And that is because we want to encourage as many kids as possible to drive themselves to the school. That just further helps us in terms of ridership on buses, helps with our times and ridership. So that's a suggestion, is to waive the costs for this year. We thought about charging at least $5 or $10, but then I thought it would just be better just to waive it entirely to minimize the amount of money that has to be transacted in the high school office. I will say though that all students will still need to have a permit in order to park, because that enables us to control who is parking there and to restrict privileges if we need to. A couple more things would be a change in our backpack policy, and that's because we now, especially at the high school, we want kids to not use the lockers, and instead they are going to be taking their books and other items from class to class each day, instead of walking to the locker and then all of a sudden we have literally hundreds of kids in the same small area for 10 minutes. So we are changing our backpack policy. And then of course, if kids are not allowed to use lockers, then it's pretty hard for us to expect students to keep cell phones in their lockers. And so there is a change in that. But I will say that at the high school level, I left enough flexibility so that George and his team could develop procedures to make sure that those are monitored appropriately. Those are some of the big changes. There is a red line version of the proposed handbooks attached as extras to tonight's agenda.
a lot of people came up in the queue pretty quickly. Holly, did you I see you at 623. Are you first?
I think that was my last one. So I think it's Heidi and Janie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I have a few questions. Title IX was listed as changing staff to assign that as we change positions in the district office. I understand there's new training required under the new Title IX regulations. Is that taking place?
The training has not taken place yet,
Right.
but all of the people listed on that sheet will participate in training. So that include harassment, bullying, Title IX, all of those particular areas. And so my thinking is that we would have our attorney provide that training to those listed, and possibly some others. Since we'll have the attorney provide the training, we might also invite others as well.
Okay, good. I didn't catch it, so maybe it's there. Page 20 on the red line version, visitors, contractors, volunteers. Are we collecting more information from them for contract tracing? Didn't know if that was clarified or not. I didn't really see it called out.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. You kind of cut in and out, but I think I have the gist of your question, Heidi.
Okay.
You know, I love going down to the veranda or whatever the new name is at the St. James. And every time I walk in the door, they ask for my name, telephone number, and those kinds of things.
Right.
And of course, they're doing that so they can do their contact tracing in case there's something that happens, you know, due to COVID. And so, you know, we'll be changing our sign-in forms for that
Okay.
to ask for that information and for that reason.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I know we're minimizing all of that contact, but still we're going to have to take certain deliveries and pieces might have to be fixed within the building that we can't do ourselves, whatever. Food service changes. What is the breakfast looking like? That said, depending on the building, do you have any more information at this time or is that still in development?
You know, I've worked with Brent on a number of food service issues, and we've kind of changed our strategies as we've gone through the planning process. If Brent is available, I'd like him to answer that question. And if not, I think we should wait until September 8th when I can share the latest version with you.
Okay.
All right, Jeannie.
All right.
Mine was just clarifying. I think it is great that we're talking about possibly waiving the parking fee, but Karsten, I don't know if you were aware, it has been on Facebook and such that kids can pick up their permit and pay half right now. So I just wanted to bring that up. But I know this is up as a consideration, but just that we note that there has been some communication already out there on Facebook.
Yeah, really, the decision rests with the school board because we include that information in the board packet. So I think there may have been some well-intentioned folks, you know, announcing that, but really the recommendation tonight is to waive it entirely.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. So
yeah, we'll, if the board approves what's being recommended, then we'll make sure that that gets changed on Facebook ASAP.
And then my second one is a little bit more, is the district as a whole, I mean, I know we have a little bit in the handbook, but as far as encouraging what parents should be doing to self-monitor health and such, are we going to do any more proactive, like here's 3 or 4 things you should be looking at? I just think we need to be very clear with parents about just being aware of, you know, possibly taking temperatures before they come to school and such. And are we going to do any more than that than what's currently in the handbooks?
Yeah, with our the weekly E12 learning plan that I've been sending, there is verbiage there, and that's great. But yeah, we need something that will attract more attention from parents instead of just something in writing. And so I'll talk to Joni. I know the state and county offices are preparing materials that, you know, are more colorful and more you know, to generate some more interest in reviewing it. We didn't want to push it too much over the last couple of weeks just because, you know, parents are worried about other things, but as we get closer to school, we're going to hammer that home. So I'll pass that message on to Joni to see what we can start sending out. Thank you.
And I realize we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm sure every school district and MSBA will have things. I just think that's going to be important for all of us to kind of have a neat little video or graphic. So thank you.
And Holly is next in the queue.
Yeah, my question was back to the backpacks and the cell phone policy. So one of the reasons that we did that was for safety and distraction, is my understanding, Karsten?
Yeah, of course, this year we'll have about half of the kids in the building at a given time. And so some of the concerns about safety will be mitigated because they won't be, you know, in in the space between the desks as people are walking around. We'll have better control of it. Also, George, Jay, and Isaac will need to make sure that we're monitoring restroom usage, so we don't have a lot of kids congregating in restrooms. And so that'll be the other leg as far as addressing potential safety concerns.
Okay, so with that, George, maybe you can answer this if you're thinking in the lines of, as people get ready, are teachers going to develop their own cell phone policies per their classroom expectations, or is there a school-wide tier 1 PBIS approach to backpacks and cell phones?
Sorry about that. Holly, that's a good question. I actually like the change on the cell phone policy because it does give the classroom teacher more. I guess there's some leeway in there to as far as the cell phones go that we can utilize, and one of the things that we're hoping to do is as we approach the school year, we're talking about doing a onboarding on this September 2nd and 3rd with our students, and that'll be something we're going to talk about with them. And as you mentioned, I think it's important to talk about that as part of our PBIS. I mean, we want to be proactive with making sure that the cell phones aren't distracting student learning, but I also want to make sure that as we work with students, we're not causing situations where things will blow up more than they need to over a cell phone as well. I think that's happened in the past, and I think that's been a reason I have kind of thought maybe we don't necessarily need to have as strict a phone policy as we've had, and so I think I like the way it's written right now, to be very honest with you, and I think that'll help. I do understand the concern over backpacks. That is something that, as Karsten kind of mentioned, we'll have to be more vigilant with. Because there always is that concern, and you're right. It was more about space in the classroom and safety, and so those are some things we'll just have to kind of be vigilant with. But the space issue shouldn't be, as Karsten mentioned, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. I don't know if I answered your question very well.
That just lends me just to one more question around cell phones. In my experience, students will often bring their cell phones and say they forgot their district issued technology and want to use a cell phone in place of that technology. And well, as we both know, cell phones aren't as user friendly when you're trying to write a paper. Kids write paper on a cell phone, and I've actually seen one do it. However, what is going to be the policy around the district issued technology and people bringing their own technology? Have we gone into detail on that at all, Karsten or George?
I can maybe step in and answer that. The students will have to use their district issued technology, and that has a lot to do with the district issued technology will have all of the securities on it and everything like that, and it's a lot cleaner for our building as far as the internet usage. So that's definitely that's our plan anyway.
And liability in terms of if it breaks, if it falls off a table or something like that.
Yeah, if things break, we'll have to help replace that. I guess I don't know the particulars on what technology is decided as far as how that'll be replaced. My assumption is that we will replace it. But I don't know the particulars on that.
Right. That was more my thinking. If it's district issued, then we're liable to help. However, if it's not district issued, that gets very tricky for people.
Yeah, that is correct. Yes. Yep.
And adding to George's thoughts, it's going to depend on the circumstances. if a student takes a district issued Chromebook and throws it intentionally against the wall, that's one thing. But if it's normal wear and tear, if it's basic repairs or accidents, then typically the district will fix it, upgrade it, or change it.
And any more you want to add on to students bringing their own technology to use?
We're and Mike Pagel can certainly address this during the E12 learning plan portion of the meeting. But our preference is that students will use district issued Chromebooks, and he can elaborate that why that's the case here in just a few minutes.
Do we want to have that in writing?
Yeah, and again, Mike can, I think if we could at least go through the handbooks for now, and then during the E12 learning plan, I've invited Mike to answer questions like that. And so if we'll get to that when we get to that section of the meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else that we need to talk about regarding the handbooks? There's the employee guidelines and the student handbook.
I'm in the queue.
Oh, okay, Arlen, I don't see you there, but sorry.
It should be the bottom one.
Oh, yeah, there you are. I just had
All
to-
right.
Sorry,
Because
Arlen.
Carson referenced me here on the handbook, I was just going to point out what it was cleaning up some language in regards to start time at the high school. Some areas were in the handbook were addressed correctly, but then it talked about the parking lot. You need to be parked by 10 minutes to 8. And it was just general cleanup of other areas in the handbook to get the consistency on start time with the school. And then the other thing was verbiage in certain areas in regards to the parking permit fee. If it says that the parking fee was waived at that time, but at another place it referred to paid parking privileges and stuff. And that's what I had put out there and got cleaned up in there. So just so people know what I had asked when I put that out there back on Saturday. So thank you.
Thanks, Arlen. Sorry about that. Mike, you had a question or comment?
I appreciate the flexibility teachers may have with the cell phone policy, but I think it also aids teachers to have a uniform policy so that the students know what's expected of their cell phones in every classroom. Just throwing that out there. I think it makes it easier for everybody if there's a uniform policy and that it's followed by all of the staff.
You bring up a really good point, Mike. And
I don't know if George wants to talk about that or not, but in my opinion,
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, I think the consistency will be in our approach. I think it's, a lot of this comes down to, the expectation we set with the students first, saying that we don't want it disrupting the learning process. If it is thought to be doing so, then if a teacher asks, gives a warning to put the cell phone away, they should expect maybe the next time then to have to hand it over to the staff member. I think the real key here is if we ask that they hand it over, but then they get it at the end of the hour as opposed to it goes to the office for the rest of the day. I think that's where we've run into more problems, is when we've held the cell phone for the day. And I understand why we would do that. And I would say that would be in a more extreme case. I think sometimes the cell phone becomes kind of that thing that causes a teacher and student to get at odds, and I just think it makes it real difficult. So I think that's kind of my thought behind it. So as long as we're consistent with staff on a warning, and then as my feeling is, if they are if the student is then insubordinate, with that becomes the issue, not not the cell phone itself, but it's the insubordination that we need to discipline. And so that's kind of where I'm at with the cell phone thing. And I think that can help make this a little bit more consistent. But I do appreciate what you're saying there, Mike. Yes, we want to make sure we're consistent across the board in how we approach that initial situation where it might be a disruption in the class.
Right. So it'll ultimately be up to you to make sure that the teachers are enforcing the uniform policy, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, part of the cell phone the reason we changed it to begin with is actually a safety issue, because there were students that were texting, meet me at door C, or I'm gonna meet you in the parking lot, but then I need a way to get back into the building. And we do have more safety. Did we put all of those sensors on all the doors up at the high school? So we've got some more control over what's happening up there. Is that correct, Karsten?
Yeah, I think as we've had, kids who will text their friends and the friends say they have to go to the bathroom, then they'll open up the door so their friends get in. That's one thing. Probably a bigger concern right now is restroom use. They'll text each other to meet in a certain restroom at a certain time. And so I think that'll be the one area where high school administration can try to control by having more adults in the hallways. They're also meeting in other places, that they don't think have video cameras. And so those are the control points that we need to follow or need to address.
Heidi, would it be okay to ask Holly's comment before yours, since it's still on the cell phone issue?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Holly.
Thanks, Pam. Another huge issue we need to discuss is bullying on cell phones, cyberbullying, and kids spreading stuff like wildfire when they have something they shouldn't have about another student and texting it to each other throughout the day. That's been a major concern throughout high schools across the country. So, along with meeting each other in the bathroom and trying to get a way back into the building, which is very common, we also have to have a policy around how we're going to deal with someone if they misuse their cell phone through the course of the day, and it's bigger than just having it taken for an hour, and if they're using it to hurt people. And I know we addressed that before, but that's always my major concern is, when things get on cell phones and they spread like TikTok or Snapchat, like wildfire.
Yeah, and that'd be true for not only bullying, but also other harassment issues. And so I would view those as a complaint regarding harassment, bullying, or discrimination. And so that's processed differently and the consequences would be different. But you're right, Holly, we have, just like every other school in the country, we have bullying issues within the school day and outside of the school day. And we can address those kinds of misbehavior regardless of where it happens, at least in many circumstances.
Thank you. And thanks, Heidi, for letting me jump ahead of you. Go ahead.
Sure. Just a couple of questions on the employee guidelines, Carson. On page 30, you discuss leaves, and I wonder if that's getting sorted out. And again, I'm not proposing any changes. I'm just wondering if our staff are fully informed about what their options are. And I know there's some intermittent leave being considered in other districts if you work in one district and your kids go to another and the schedules don't mesh. So I'm just hoping that we have staff fully informed about what that looks like and that our HR is prepared to respond. Same kind of thing. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the HR department, I think, is prepared to respond with the information we know now.
Okay.
I'm confident with that. But, some of these things are changing regularly. And so, our advice or our decisions may change as well. But right now I feel very confident that, they're able to address those requests. And that's not only for leave requests, but also accommodations.
Right.
I feel good about the process because we're trying to do the right thing in the appropriate way.
Okay. My next question, page 31, it was about teacher licensure. And I know you're tracking, I think they call it out of field permissions now. And I know that's been brought up a little bit, maybe by some non-local people. So is there, can you describe that action at all? Again, I'm not proposing any changes. I'm just hoping we're fully aware of what our options are when it comes to managing staff and trying to fill the pieces we need to get done. And then what are the other pieces we want to get in there? And how that's going to change maybe throughout the year if we have staff that have to be out for whatever reason.
Yeah, my understanding is that the Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board, we all know it as PELSB. We don't know what it stands for, but that's what it is, PELSB. That they may have loosened some rules for teacher licensure. I haven't seen any written decisions or interpreted that, but that's my understanding.
Right.
With regard to licensure in general, we do, take that seriously, and we intend to follow, the licensure rules that are established. And it can be tricky in times like this. For example, we have maybe a K-12 art teacher who is working with an elementary licensed teacher. And so they're going to have to work it out as far as who can and should teach what area. So we honor the licensure, and at the same time, we want to give as much flexibility as we legally can to the teachers to do the work of the district.
Okay. So that's developing. My last question is, are the grading procedures, I think that was on page 39, the grading procedures, are those the same grading system as we had adopted in the spring of 2020?
Is that a page 39 of the red line version, or is it in the clean version?
Well, shoot.
Let's see.
I didn't really get a red line version. I was working off of whatever was in the regular board packet.
What section number is it?
9.12, grading procedures and reports. And you just have one sentence there. But it did prompt me to ask, are we still considering the pass fail, and we'll give you a letter grade if you request it? Or is there anything new about grading for the fall starting into this year that we should know?
Yeah, that the pass fail issue had to do with crisis learning last spring.
Okay.
And so George, unless you, George or Jess or one of the elementary principals, unless you have different information based on your own discussions, my understanding is that kids will be graded as they traditionally would be graded. But again, I haven't been privy to every single discussion. So George, Jess, and the others, feel free to jump in if you have some different information.
I can just jump in real quick and just say, right now we're planning on moving forward as we normally would as far as grading. Now, in saying that, there are some districts that are doing things a little bit differently. But at this point, if we were to do anything different, we would run it through our site team and obviously have conversations at this level as well. But at this point, we're just planning on moving forward as normal.
Okay, I just think maybe we need to clarify that a little bit for the public too. So thank you. That's all I have. Public too. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else that we want to talk about with the handbooks? If not, I would be looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve both the student handbook and the employee guideline documents as presented tonight.
Motion made by Heidi, seconded by Heidi. Any other discussion or clarification points needed? Any further discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote on those motions, or that motion to approve both the student handbook and the employee handbook, starting with Ms. Fair.
Aye.
And Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
No.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
and Chair would vote aye. So the handbooks pass with a vote of 6-1. And then moving on to our next agenda item, which is the E12 learning plan.
Yeah, if I could jump in, one thing, I started with a full battery and now I'm almost done. If I don't find a charging cord, I'm going to disconnect, drive home, and plug in there. So just to let you know why I might be leaving the meeting for a few minutes. But tonight's E12 learning plan is going to be focused first on the E part of the E12, early childhood, just as important as the K-12 part. Min Martin Oaks will be presenting information about what they're planning to do at the Colville Family Center. Then we also have Mike Pagel, who is here to answer, for example, Holly's questions that she posed earlier in the meeting. And so he'll be available to answer those questions and other technology teaching questions. Also, Jess Whitcomb is available to answer some remaining questions. And I'm sure other administrators are on the call as well. So, but if we could start with Min, then we can go on to Mike and Jess.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. The first thing I'd like to say is that our Colville teachers are so excited to have kids back in our building. It's just, I mean, they're just so grateful to be able to see their students again. So I'll first talk about how things will look different in our building overall, and then I'll highlight some things about all the programs that we have at Colville and how those will look. Overall, one of the things that will look different is that except for family education, parents will not be coming into the building when they drop off. Their child's teacher and their child's paraprofessional will meet them at one of two entrances, and they will say their goodbyes there, and then the teacher or the paraprofessional will take them to class. That is so, you know, I don't know if you've ever been in Colville at the start of the day, but we used to have our start time at 8:45, and there was just a crush of people in the lobby. Great excitement, great hubbub. It was all wonderful. And of course, we can't do any of that right now. So we're changing that. We are also staggering our arrival and our departure times. So everybody will get the same amount of preschool minutes. However, some will start sooner, leave sooner. Some will start later, leave later. Again, to keep that congestion at a minimum as we come and go. Also, we have, you know, a really challenging parking situation at Colville, and that will help us manage that piece a little bit as well. We will, when parents drop off, we will have a series of questions that we will go through with them, asking about any health changes for anyone in their household over the last 24 hours. And parents will wear masks when they drop off. Parents will wear masks when they attend family education classes. Staff will wear masks. In accordance with the governor's order, children in our building will not wear masks. However, if a parent wants their child to wear a mask, we will do our best to keep masks on children, fully knowing that will be a pretty big challenge, but we want to honor parents' wishes in that way. So that's kind of a quick overview. Our family education classes will look a little bit different in that we swapped out a preschool classroom for a family ed classroom. So they're in a somewhat smaller room, and they'll have smaller class sizes, but more of a variety of things. And so we'll have some in-person classes. We'll have a hybrid that's an in-person and an online class. And then for the first time, we'll have a completely online parenting class, which some parents have really expressed a lot of interest in, perhaps not comfortable coming into a building, but I'd still like that connection with other parents. So I think that will be a really positive thing. We're also continuing, most of this would be virtual, but we're continuing all of the really good outreach that our family education team does, and that includes going to the correctional facility to teach parenting to young men who are incarcerated, who may or may not be dads yet. Tower View, the Prairie Island Indian community is another community that we serve, and we have a collaborative class with Goodhue County Social Services. So one way or another, all those classes will continue, and I just think that is the heart of our family education. And we have a parent educator who is has such a heart for being sure that we're accessing underserved populations. It really makes a difference in the community. The preschool will be in session on the regular schedule that it would be on. So if K4 is in session, we are in session. We will have smaller class sizes. That's to allow for distancing in the halls and in the classrooms. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, but it's an important piece that we're doing. Part of what we'll really emphasize in Cobble Kids, and of course we will emphasize things like safety precautions like hand washing, learning about distancing, helping children learn why adults are wearing masks, and showing them this is what I look like with my mask on and this is what I look like with my mask off, so it won't be a frightening thing for them. We're of course going to really focus on that social emotional well-being for kids. I think that's just it's always critical, but it's even more critical right now. And as you know, we use conscious discipline is our social emotional curriculum. We were able to get a grant from Live Well Goodhue County so that we can expand our use of our use of conscious discipline. We can offer it to parents. We can offer it as a refresher to staff. We will be giving out information on conscious discipline at screening, which is open to everyone in the community. And we'll also be giving kids books at screening, which we've always done, but those will be focused on social emotional wellness and self-regulation as well. So those are some of the changes for Cobble Kids. Early childhood special education will continue, of course, whatever model we're in. All of our early childhood special education teachers from birth to 5 have been writing their contingency learning plans that cover all of the 3 learning scenarios. And so those plans are in place, and so parents will know this is what it will look like if we go to distance. So that those will continue, of course. We've already started early childhood screening. We hadn't had a screening since March, and of course that's required by Minnesota state law. So we're starting screenings again. We'll have less students coming in. Only one parent will be able to come with the child, and we'll just structure that differently so that the child is only in one room and only has contact with 2 screening staff. It used to be that the children moved from room to room and would have contact with several screening staff. So all of those things, of course, just being put in place in order to keep things safe for our kids. Normally in the fall we have welcome events, and it's great fun. All the parents come in and we do a little orientation with them, and then they get to go to the classroom with their child and meet the teacher and see the classroom and play. And as I said, it's great fun, but it's a great crowd of people. And again, that's something that we can't do. So what we've done this year is the teachers and I put together a welcome and an orientation video. It's on Facebook, it's on the district website, and parents are to watch that. First of all, they got a welcome letter that will explain some of the changes that'll be happening, and had them go look for the video. So they watch the video, and then after they have watched the video, they can make a 10-minute appointment to see their child's teacher. So it's a staff person will meet them in the parking lot, escort them to the classroom. They'll have 10 minutes with the teacher, and then they'll be escorted out. And that is by appointment only, and there will only be 4 families in the building at a time. Not as much fun, but way safer, at least in this situation. So, and of course, Cobble Kids is a tuition-based program because the state of Minnesota doesn't currently provide free preschool for 4-year-olds. Don't get me on that soapbox because I'll take up your whole meeting talking about that. But we are a tuition-based program. So when we're reducing enrollment, we're reducing our tuition base as well. However, we have had some staff changes with a couple of transfers and 1 resignation. And we are, at least at the current time, not replacing those full-time positions to be more in line with how many students we have in the building and also to balance things fiscally. So this is probably the last time that I'm going to talk to all of you because I will be transitioning out of my position on December 31st. So I thank you for the opportunity. And I just really encourage you to keep early childhood strong because it makes a strong community and it makes a very strong school district. So I'm available for any questions you might have.
Any questions for Min right now?
No, I think you gave us a very thorough overview. I appreciate it. It really laid out everything for me, and I think you guys are experts at adaptation. So hats off to the entire staff for working so hard to adjust to something they've never had to do before and do it in a different way. So thank you, Min. And Holly officially signed in, so I'm going to sign out.
Go ahead, Holly.
Thanks so much, Min. It sounds like you have tried to hit every corner of this. What is the policy for our little people in masks?
Yep. In keeping with the governor's order, we are not requiring the students to wear masks, but if parents want a child to wear a mask, we will honor that. And what we have promised parents is we will do our best. You know, some of our students who attend the preschool are 2.5. So that could be real challenging, but we will certainly do our best to honor those parents' wishes. Certainly if the governor's order would change at any time, we will update our policy on that.
What about the adults? Will they all be wearing masks throughout the day or face shields?
Yep, one or both. All of the staff will be wearing them. Any parents that come to family education will be wearing them. And parents, even though we just greet them at the door now for preschool, they will be wearing masks as well.
Okay. Yep, it's hard to picture all these little people. Yeah, with little masks on. Doesn't feel right.
No, it doesn't.
Thanks, Min.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions for Min while we've got her here? We're sure going to miss you in your position, and we definitely thank you for all the work. And it's a big task that you are working on, so I thank you. I know there's layers upon layers with every decision that you make, and it's not going unnoticed or unappreciated. So thank you to you and your crew at Cobble, and we wish you well in your new role.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is just upcoming meetings and adjournment, which we know that following this meeting, we do have a board workshop. So I'm going to ask you all to sign out. It's 7:06. So why don't we sign back in to start at 7:50?
Weren't we expecting Mike and Jess to speak just a few minutes?
Oh, are we?
Mike signed in.
Yep.
Nice.
Pagel?
Okay.
I can try to keep it brief. I'll do my fast talk and tell you the next meeting. So just a couple of things, kind of back to some of the questions that Holly asked, and then I know a few board meetings ago there were some questions about why one-to-one versus a bring your own device. So I'll kind of tackle that piece first, and then I think I'll try to address what Holly asked, and then take any other questions that folks have. So in answer to the why one-to-one versus a bring your own device, because, you know, Janie did hit it. Obviously, a one-to-one is going to cost more than just bring what you've got. But there are several advantages, I think, to doing a one-to-one with Chromebooks. The first being, I think George already addressed it, that those devices are now on our monitored network. In addition, we're currently looking at a monitoring software that's called GoGuardian that works really well with our own devices, with our own Chromebooks. It more or less, it does a lot of really cool things. It allows, first of all, teachers to be able to real-time monitor what their students are doing on those school devices. So I know, I got a question in the spring, like, how can you keep my kid off YouTube? And the reality is, with this, you would be able to do that. The teacher would be able to more or less bop that kid right off of YouTube, send them a kind message, a reminder of what we're currently doing. It does also allow the teacher to push information out to students. So especially as the principal at a primary level school, I mean, not this year, but most years, being able as a first grade teacher, for example, not to have to say, okay, we're going to visit this now, go back to the Google Classroom and click on this link. A teacher can literally push that website out to every student device. Yeah, when a student is not on one of our devices, we still have the ability to do that if they're signed into Chrome within the Chrome browser. But as the parent of 3 children that have gone through the Red Wing Public School system, my oldest is a senior, they figure out at a pretty early age how to find the workarounds. We can block Facebook, we can block Snapchat, we can block those things, but I can tell you every single high school student knows exactly how to get on those things, even though they're blocked. And that's kind of the same with their own device. If they're on a laptop, for example, I can see what they're doing through GoGuardian via the Chrome browser, but there's no reason they couldn't also be opening a browser in Firefox or another software and be doing things that I would have no idea what they're doing. Whereas on a Chromebook, it's fixed. They're on Chrome. We know exactly what they're doing. So that would be one biggie. A second biggie is we learned this spring that all devices don't always play maynicely with especially Google Classroom and some of the things that we've pushed out. I know we had several families that were on specifically iPads, but Apple products in general that ended up coming back to us and asking for a Chromebook because things just were not working very well on those devices. A third reason, and this was another one that really popped out to us this spring, is tech support. Our tech support team isn't huge, and it gets really difficult when they're trying to support people within several different devices. If we've got some that are on Chromebooks, some that are on Windows laptops, some that are on iPads, some that are on maybe Amazon Fire tablets and any other sort of device, it can be very challenging, whereas when it is on one platform, it's easier for our existing tech team. It's also easier for our media techs at each building because that is one of the roles they're going to be supporting with during this year, especially the media part versus the library part, I think is really going to be pronounced this year. In talking to our tech support, there are a lot of things, including some repairs, replacements of screens, that sort of thing, that with a 5-minute, 10-minute tutorial can be accomplished by those folks. And so that really simplifies that. There is obviously a cost up front, a higher cost up front, but one of the things to remember is that in some senses we're trading one cost for another. Traditionally, we've had computer labs in each of our buildings. We are more or less taking some of the funds that are being used to replace those more expensive desktop devices with less expensive Chromebook devices. And to be perfectly honest, Kevin Johnson would be the one that would be able to give you more of the cost breakdown and the lease breakdown. That's really been in his wheelhouse to this point. But with the new devices, we are at this point not purchasing, we're leasing, which was a cost savings as well. So having said that, there's no reason, to Janie's point, if somebody's got an additional Chromebook at home and they want to use that at home, there's nothing that would prevent them from doing so. But really, I think those are the primary reasons why we've looked to doing a one-to-one. And to be honest, after the spring, we were pretty close to it already anyways. Some are newer, some are older devices, but we were close enough that it made a lot of sense. And as the guy on the tech committee that has been with the master's degree in educational technology that has been whining about one-to-one for over a decade now, it only took a pandemic for us to get there.
That is super helpful, and I really appreciate that path that the district is taking. It sounds like it's on the cutting edge of what's going on in one-to-ones and technology for schools and for teachers. Sorry to jump in, Janie. I'm all done. I just wanted to thank Mike.
Sure.
That is just fine. That is warranted. But thanks for that. I think that is great information. I just wondered, will parents and students see a marked difference then from the spring, Mike, as far as like having our own network then and being monitored and these push notifications to elementary? I mean, will it be markedly different, or did we have that already between our own Chromebook networks in the spring?
Yeah, the only difference will be the Go Guardian piece. And actually, that's going to be more a difference on the teacher side of things, which is actually why, and Carson had sent out an email to teachers indicating this. We know that right now on August 24th, our teachers have more than enough to worry about. So that's going to be a piece that we're going to grow into a little bit over time. We know that we'll have early adopters. I know that there are teachers right now that if they're sent a username and password, they'd be on it tomorrow figuring it out and they'd be ready to roll day one. But we also know that we're going to have a number of teachers that are going to need more ongoing support and building into that. So that's really kind of the way we're looking at that. On the user end, there's not going to be a significant difference, other than they will, they may, if the student is off task, they might get a little message that pops up from the teacher that says, hey, Billy, remember, this is what we're supposed to be doing right now. But there won't be a significant difference on the user end than there was this spring. Holly, you got to ask a question too, just in terms of what, that information being shared out. I've got a draft of a separate one-to-one handbook, so to speak, that actually I'm meeting with Karsten and with Kevin Johnson to really look at and try to get into a more final version this next week that will address a lot of those things that we're asking about in terms of what do repairs look like, what gets covered, what doesn't get covered. I've been, the best approach is always to go to places that are technology leaders and see what you can beg, borrow, and steal from them. So I've been doing a heavy amount of that over the last several weeks and seeing how other districts are approaching this. What a lot of them do is they have some of them will refer to it as an insurance plan, but I don't like that term because it's not really insurance, it's a repair plan. So there's a nominal fee of some sort, and I know a lot of districts will drop that fee over time as they sort of build that up. And what that does is then that will cover any accidental, breakages and repairs or things that stop. But there are limitations on that. Like Carson said, if you chuck it against the wall or, leave it out in the rain and some of those sorts of things, it's not necessarily covered. So those things will all be kind of more clearly laid out in that piece that will, again, come to you to take a look at as well.
And
Thanks,
what I really appreciate is that, we've talked about technology and integrating one-to-one initiatives for a long time. We've been talking about this quite a bit, and we've looked at it in the long-term facilities and the 10-year financial plan. So I'm glad to see that we're able to provide this. There are a lot of districts out there struggling to figure out what to do this fall because they're not able to provide this technology support. And with the hotspots that we've been able to purchase as well as some specific devices, I think that we're well on our way to being able to provide exactly what we need for this fall and this school year moving forward. So it's exciting to hear and see, and I'm excited to see how things progress this fall. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Pagel?
I just signed up, Pam. Yes. In the event that we go to distant learning or learning while the children are at home, the students are at home. I want to get the vocabulary right. No kids at schools. In the event that we go that route, can the teachers still push out where they want kids to be if they have an open, if they have open time in their classroom and all the kids are supposed to show up at this time, can they still push out what the kids are supposed to see, not be on the school network right then and there?
Yes, with Go Guardian, they will be able to do that, which is one of the big advantages of that, is whether the student is on our network or whether they're at home, if they're on that Chrome browser and on our network, it will still work to be able to push that out, which I think is a huge advantage and a big part of why we were looking at it, because we've been asked by the governor to plan for all three scenarios. Of course, we hope we move in the direction of the all-in scenario. I mean, I think that's the hope of everybody in our country right now. But we also have to be prepared for the other end of that spectrum, which is everybody at home learning online. And this, I think, goes a long ways towards making that experience much more fluid, and to be able to do those things real time, that I think will be really useful.
Yeah, because you mentioned that it won't be that much different for the kids at home, but actually having that Go Guardian will be much different for the kids receiving it at home. Am I wrong?
In what way? I mean,
if there's a certain thing that the teacher wants the kids to do and a parent is sitting with them, or a parent's walking by, or they're not, they could be like, what are you supposed to be on this? Or, teachers can communicate to parents. This is what we're working on. These are the websites that are okay with me. They shouldn't be on this, this, and this. If you see them on this, this, and this, this is not okay. Those kind of things I think can be hugely helpful to families.
Yes, yeah, in that respect, absolutely. And I guess I was referring more to it's not going to require a lot of additional learning how to use a system,
yep.
But it really, yes, in that respect, I think it's something a lot of parents will really appreciate, because not only can real time, if a teacher sees that a student is off on something they shouldn't be, they can pull them back. So like the YouTube example, but even go back through, there's kind of a history. So you can kind of go back through, if a parent calls and says, hey, was my kid doing blah, 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 the teacher literally can go back and look at the time and say, yep, he was on what he was supposed to be at that time. So I think both from a monitoring standpoint, but then also a communication standpoint, I think it could be significant.
That's awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Anything else? Jess, did you have some comments or things to add to this discussion?
I was just here to answer any questions, but what I will say is on the curriculum side of it, Go Guardian is a very exciting program. To Holly's point, that's always the pull your hair out as a teacher as you're trying to use technology. And one of the things that the person who was trying to give us the demo, she told all the administrators, hey, pull up all the tabs that you want to be on right now instead of school. And then they were closed as we were trying to type, they would close, oh, that one's gone, that one's gone, as she was doing it from up there, and we kind of saw the power that had. And my favorite one was the screens go dark and it says, please look up at your teacher now. And that's one of the biggest things where you want to pull them out. Okay, come on, you have 10 reminders, friendly reminders to ask kids to do that. And so that was probably the most powerful one for me as we had this demo. And then the other thing was, how do we fit that into our professional development so everybody gets that? We actually found that out a little bit ago, that we have that scheduled for Thursday now. So everybody will have the Go Guardian professional development as well, and then the follow-up throughout the year. So that would be my only addition. I think I talked way too much last week at you guys. So if you had any more questions, I'm able to answer those. But otherwise, I am ready to talk about observations next.
I do have one question. We talked about all of the great things with the Go Guardian and the technology and the one-to-one. How are we going to get information out to parents in terms of what we're offering with this program, with the technology, the one-to-one, and how are we going to let them know about the Go Guardian and the advantages to that?
Looks like Mike's ready to answer that one, so I won't step on his toes.
Well, I can answer on the Chromebook side. That's most of that information is going to be in that handbook that will go with families. Part of it is there is something for them to sign, but it's got a lot of information in there just in terms of what is this one-to-one, what are kind of the expectations for families, for students. It's not specific to Go Guardian. Whether that will be in there or whether that is something that I will put together and we'll communicate out separately to families, one way or the other, we'll get that information out when we're ready to go live with that.
And I think one of the things that, oh, sorry,
No, I just had one question, but follow up and then I'll follow you.
So the other thing that I was going to say about Go Guardian that I love probably more than the program itself, is that it's not a separate login. There's nothing that parents have to do separately. It's more of a classroom management tool, and that the parents do not have to do any monitoring. So that's what I think telling them what it is will be helpful to like know why screens are closing, maybe why a kid made the noise that I did in the middle of an email, like, it's gone, my thing is gone that I wanted to be on. So that would be the only thing of letting them know what this tool is. But as far as how to do it, that was the sell point for me, that this is not another thing. It's immediately when you log in. Sorry, go ahead, Holly.
Yeah. Are we going to be encouraging or looking to have parents get the app? There's a parent app that goes along with it.
I do not know if we will be encouraging parents to do that. We can look into that. Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, we can certainly look into it. There are different components of it. So there's the full GoGuardian suite, which is, everything and the kitchen sink, and you pay for everything and the kitchen sink. I'd have to go back and look to see if that parent piece is a part of the GoGuardian teacher or if that is a separate add-on. I honestly, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Just let us know when you can.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
Any other questions for Mr. Pagel? Well, he's here as well. Okay. Anything else on the E12 learning plan? I think these are all the great details that our families have been really hoping to hear much more about. So this is really exciting that we're getting down into the very big details now of how is the day going to look? How is it going to run? Which tools are we going to use? How are they going to be presented? So I think this is exactly what parents have been needing and wanting to hear and waiting to hear. So I'm excited that we're able to offer a really great product for them. Arlen.
Yeah, I hate to drag this out, but I think it's important to let the public know how grateful I am as a board member in the approval of our referendum, which really gave us the ability. Maybe we're not doing everything exactly as planned with the whole learning plan and everything prior to our referendum, but had we not had this referendum passed, we would really be in the toilet when it comes time to come up with these electronic devices and do our learning. And so I just want to say thank you to the public. We're doing the best we can with what we got. I think the goal was to get to one-to-one devices one way or another. It's accelerated a little bit over what some were. I wanted this to happen the first year, but it was like a 4 or 5 year project initially. We're there, but this is the ability to do this with all these different things and get this learning in place. I can't just stress how valuable it is that we can do that and that we have at least the resources we do have to do this. So thank you to the public.
Really well stated, Arlen. I think that we can all share in that appreciation and thanks. That's really key to all of this effort. Mr. Pagel.
Well, I found the answer to Holly's question quick. So unfortunately, the parent app is not part of the GoGuardian teacher. It is part of the GoGuardian admin, which is a whole district filtering. And the district I know is, and again, Kevin could tell you whether it's a year or 2 years, we're still under contract with our current. This is what basically filters. So if students are to try to seek out something inappropriate on our network, it's what blocks them. So it would be really redundant for us to add an extra cost. So I do know in talking with Kevin and talking with the GoGuardian rep that that's something we will look at and consider using that as our filtering. And then at that time we could look to add the parent app. So there's the answer to your question.
Great answer. I just wanted to put it out there in case families Google all of this and they're like, "What? I want the parent app. I want the parent. Why can't I?" Now we know.
Now we know.
Not yet.
Perfect.
Any last things before we move on in our agenda?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. made by
Mike seconds.
Mike second. Before we take our roll call vote, let's see, it is 7:27. We do have another meeting right after this for our workshop. So let's take a little stretch break, and you have a separate invitation to join that meeting, and we will meet at 7:35. How about that? So motion on the table to adjourn. Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Tower,
Aye.
Mr. Bryant,
Aye.
Mr. Christensen,
Aye.
Mr. Derricks,
Aye.
Ms. Fair.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, 7-0. We are adjourned, and I'll see you at 7:35.